right. Let's go. All right, hopefully this is coming through okay. Let's see here. How are we doing, everybody? Not muted. Well, that's good. Loud and clear, I hear. Awesome. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here for another dev stream. All right, let me just make sure I've got everything set up the right way here. Yeah, did y'all like that new intro? That's pretty cool, huh? I kind of want to play it again, just to, just for the hell of it. Let's try that one more time. I want to see it again. Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's all right. Our Matt from our team made that little animation. I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. It's just short and sweet. How is everybody doing? It is amazing to see you all here today. Oh, you know what? Let's see. Oh, I guess it's okay. I was trying to think if I better shut the door over there, but I think it'll be all right. Hype train already. I haven't even started doing anything yet, but I am hyped. This is going to be a cool stream. This one's about the 0.8.2 update, which is going to be coming out. It's an alpha channel update. It's going to be coming out almost right after the stream today. So stay tuned for that. It will be an alpha channel update, so I'll give some appropriate disclaimers about what that means once I start talking about it. But yeah, the plan for today is to go over everything that we did, and well, maybe not everything, but time permitting, we'll cover everything that we did and show you some live examples of what's new in the software as a result of the update. Do some license key giveaways, as is our custom. Showcase some cool stuff that's coming up, talk about the overall development process for 0.8.2, and overall the 0.8 update version that will be eventually coming to the release channel for all of you. I'm sure many of you have questions about when that will be. I'll be talking about that. And yeah, I'll be talking about a little bit of just sort of team news and ongoing happenings that I can share with you guys. Yeah, so I think maybe I'll start with some announcements just about things that are going on right now. So there's a couple of cool things that I really wanted to comment on, and just while I have everyone here. First thing you should know is that, as I said, the 0.8.2 update, it's ready to go. It's going to be coming out. You can actually see the URL for the update notes up here. I can maybe put it in chat as well, or someone else can put it in chat. They're just draft notes, so there might still be a few little changes, but I think the notes are pretty much ready to go. So if you want to start reading them while we talk about it on the stream, you can read through the notes and sort of follow along with the stuff that I'm going to be covering. I do think we'll be releasing this after the stream today. So that'll be in just a couple hours. And some other announcements. Tomorrow there will be another stream on this same Twitch channel. It won't be me, it will be some folks on the team. So it will be Anathema and Cody, and maybe a guest appearance from... Actually, no, I think Matt's helping to run the stream, but Kakaretto from The Forge will be a guest on the show. It will be the first show in the Hammering It Out series. It's kind of going to be a little bit of a sort of talk show style, just chat with the community, talk about some happenings and stuff. So that's going to be tomorrow. So if you've got a mood to learn about some other cool stuff that's going on in the Foundry community, then tomorrow there'll be more streams on this channel. Another little announcement that I wanted to highlight is that we had some very cool content launches recently. So, since some of you may not have, seen all of those, I just wanted to, mention what we've had come out soon. We've got new premium content from Paizo, some Pathfinder bounties, 5 of them. That are very cool, sort of one-shot adventures for low-level gameplay. Those are all released recently. We've also had some new free content that you can all enjoy with the Sirens Battle of the Bards Kickstarter playtest. That Kickstarter is still ongoing. You should definitely check it out if you have not yet. It's worth considering if you want to support it. New cyberpunk maps from Frag Maps, new music from Micro Music. I'll play some of that stuff during the stream today. And there's also some other cool Kickstarter content going on right now for the Symbaroum for 5e Kickstarter from Free League, which is still approaching the home stretch, but they're going to have Foundry content related to that. So there's just like lots of really cool stuff going on and happening in the greater Foundry community that I would encourage you all to take a look at, check out. There's some great stuff going on. All right. As far as other announcements, this isn't really an announcement, but as some of you know, the team has been growing, and so this is the first update that we've had the pleasure of having Matt and Cody contribute to. So, both of their hard work really shows up in the Alpha 082 update, and it's been really great to have their contribution as well as the existing contribution from Cobalt and from Anathema as part of the work that we're doing. And so great work to them, great work to the Discord community, who the moderators and helpers who are doing a great job there. The Reddit community, the subreddit is doing amazing. It's so busy. I stop by from time to time and I almost can't follow it. It's really incredible. All of you who've been speaking up on Twitter and elsewhere, sharing your Foundry experiences with others, it's super appreciated. So anyways, just congratulations and great work all around to the overall Foundry community. I will also be taking lots of hopefully questions today. Juan, I'll take Juan Franks first. When am I co-hosting a Twitch session along with your devs? It's a great question. That would be a great thing to do. So tell you what, I just mentioned Micro Music as some of our new exclusive content. So I'm going to put some of that on, just a little background tunes. Hopefully it's not too loud. It sounds pretty good to me, but sometimes the audio balance on the Twitch side ends up being too much music, too little music. Just shout at me. I'm going to be playing it right through Foundry, showcasing some of the new audio features that are present in the software that you can use for running your games as well. All right. So let's jump into it. I see one question from Spartaner Tom, which is a good question, asking, is there going to be a stable 7.10 release? Yeah, so let me talk about our general release plans, sort of what we're working towards. And so this is going to be the last alpha release. So no more alpha releases in 08. This is it. It got all of the features in this release, and so now the focus is just on polishing the UI, the UX, the bug fixing, making sure it's tweaked and working well. We'll want to make sure that all of these new systems are doing sort of what we want them to be doing, and that they're fun and easy to use. So from here, it's really just about beta testing. So there's going to be a beta release very soon, in about a week to 10 days. Then there's going to be probably another beta just to make sure we hit a few more bugs, a few more bug fixes. And then there's going to be a release channel update for 08. So it's going to be probably not even a month from here until all of this 08 stuff will be available for release stable games. For the question was about 0710. We will, at some point during that month, also release an update on the 07 track that will be a stable release update, 0710. It's not going to have much. It's not going to have any of this new, fun, shiny stuff, but it will have a few important fixes that will be designed for just long-term stability of 07, as well as like setting you all up to have an easy upgrade from there to 08.5, which will probably be the release version for the 08 series. So, short answer to that question, which is a really good question. There will be an 0710 update. It's not going to be big. It's going to be just a few things that are like a few important things, and that will be available sometime in the next couple weeks. All right, so let's get into the main topic of the stream, which is talking about the 08.2 update. This was a really big one. We did a lot in terms of like the size of the update. I can pull up the milestone here. It ended up being 121. Well, this one doesn't really count. 120 issues that we were able to accomplish. All of this has been captured in the notes now, so you don't necessarily need to go to GitLab, but there is some more detail in GitLab, especially for some of the notes that have like API or code examples of what was changed. So that's something you can definitely check out. But yeah, this was a big update. Honestly, the whole 08 series has been like pretty substantial, so I'm really, really ready and really excited for all of this that we've done so far to eventually get to be, release ready for all of you. All right. Let's jump into the meat of the update. So let's talk about 08 in general at first. There were sort of three big themes in 08. The one that was probably the biggest and most significant was the community voted feature of overhead tiles. Now, that is now, I don't want to use the word done because the word done is a bad word, but we have accomplished a first version of overhead tiles that I'm very proud of. I think it's working really well. It doesn't do absolutely everything I would want it to do, and I hope that we'll be able to continue improving it through the 08 beta series. So you'll see probably today some things that, maybe that could work a little bit better, but this is the very first iteration of overhead tiles, and I'm really excited about how it came out. So I hope you all will be as well. I'll spend a lot of time going over that. The second major theme of the 08 series was improving audio. You're hearing and seeing a little bit of those improvements right now. The folders, the new sidebar organization for playlists, all of the new tools, crossfading, new ambient tools, all of that stuff. I showcased a lot of it in the last stream, so I probably won't be going into depth there, but there are some new audio features that build on what I showed last time that I will definitely get into. The other main theme was, kind of the under the hood infrastructure improvements that we needed in order to empower the next generation of Foundry development. That stuff's a little bit less glamorous, but it is really important. And so I am eager to talk about some of those things that happened in this version. Now, in addition to that, 08.2 has a couple of really cool extra sort of bonus features that we were able to focus on. We made some big improvements to package management that I'll talk about. So package management meaning like when you install game systems or add-on modules, the way that is managed and the way that those updates occur, there's some changes there that will be good to share with everybody. There have also been some improvements to lighting and vision rendering, which change a little bit of the behavior of like how the canvas works and behaves. And so I'll look forward to, talking about those changes and giving you some examples of those. And we added a boatload of new icons. So many of you are already used to, well, I guess I'll save showing it until I really talk about it, but a bunch of new icons for items, skills, spells, abilities. That library of included icon artwork is continuing to expand in a really exciting way. And so, yeah, so that is the sort of the main themes. Oh, also, default token configuration. I'm not sure whether that's like a major thing or a medium-sized thing, but I'll definitely talk about that as well. So those are the key themes for the update. So let's get into the actual details of what that means. Now, the patch notes are organized to list a couple of breaking changes first. That doesn't mean that these are the biggest changes. It just means they're the ones that might most affect module developers in terms of requiring a couple of little alterations. This first one is a very minor change, so I'm just going to skip over it. It sort of does what it says it does. The next one about the sound node refactoring is one thing that I will spend some time talking about. I won't cover it first because I think overhead tiles is what most of you are eager to get into. But one of the things that came up in 081 was that very large audio files were not being handled super well. And the new audio API has the capability of handling large audio files well, but the way that it was implemented in Foundry was not necessarily taking advantage of that in the way that it best could. And so I needed to continue reorganizing a little bit of the way that the sound API is designed in order to unlock some things that I'll talk about once I get to the audio section of new features. And then there's a couple of breaking changes related to rendering of the canvas because the way that the canvas is drawn and the layers that it uses. Ooh, Christmas combat. Epic, but a little too intense for this moment right now, so I'm going to skip over that one. The way that the canvas is rendered is a little bit, it needed to change in order to support the concept of foreground and background. So in order to have overhead tiles, we needed to change a little bit the way that layering works on the canvas. So those of you developers who are, drawing custom things on the canvas, especially if they have to do with manipulating the layer order or like verticality of what's drawn, you may be affected, of course, by this update because overhead tiles happened. I see a question from Guitar Guy Nick about would this be world breaking? Now, I cannot guarantee anything, really. However, I think it's pretty safe to say that no, these changes should not be world breaking. Now, the reason why that's not an unequivocal yes is because everyone's world is based on a different game system, and every game system is doing different things. So if your game system that your world is based on is updated and ready for 008, then I don't think you'll have any problems. Although game systems that aren't yet updated, and to be fair, many of them are not yet, and that's totally fine. But game systems that aren't updated for 08, they may break in some unexpected ways. So my advice for you all would be to wait until the game system that you use for your games offers a release that targets 0.8. And once your game system has an update that's designed with 0.8 in mind, then it should be a good time for you to migrate your game worlds to use it. So yeah, it should not be world breaking. In theory, you'll load your world up in 0.8. There might be a couple of little things that automatically migrate, and everything should be good. But of course, please back up your data. Foundry Virtual Tabletop is self-hosted. That means it's your responsibility. It's all of our individual responsibilities to take care to back up your important world data before you make a big change. Really do it. If anything bad happens, you will not regret taking just a couple of seconds to take a backup first. That is really worth your time just in case. If you have a backup and something goes wrong, we can absolutely help you to get everything back exactly the way you had it before. If you don't have a backup and something goes wrong, we may or may not be able to help you. So please take that warning to heart. And there's a nice graphic on our Discord server about how only you can prevent unintended data loss. So, all right. So let's get into the actual new features. I'm going to talk about overhead tiles first, because that's the one that is kind of the biggest and most exciting change. Probably as we reorganize these like final update notes, we'll want to like maybe make a section of them that's a little bit more clearly associated with like what overhead tiles do and how they work. I think they're kind of buried in here a little bit, like, and we need to surface those in the draft notes a bit. But I will talk about what overhead tiles do right now. So let's talk about overhead tiles. So basically, the concept of overhead tiles is pretty straightforward. It's that a lot of us at least, I mean, and I will comment on the amazing work done by Grape Juice with the Epic Isometric module, but with the exception perhaps of Epic Isometric module, for the most part, using the virtual tabletop is sort of a top-down experience. That's at least the convention that most of us adhere to in terms of the assets that are being used, battle maps. The view is top-down. And so that works really well for some things that are like strategic in terms of seeing the orientation of the battlefield, in terms of moving tokens around, in terms of having, a good grid-based, whether it's hex or square, setup for making tactical decisions. One of the things that is a bit of a struggle with the top-down view is that often some of the most impressive, visual things that you might want to represent within an environment would be taller than the protagonists, or they would be above them or on top of them or overhead. And it's hard in a conventional battle map context to represent that. So the idea with overhead tiles is to give tools in order to show that there is something above you. There's, whether it's a huge statue or a tree canopy or the roof of a building or a bridge that you pass underneath, or any number of other things that you might use this for. The concept with overhead tiles is to allow you to depict those in a way that doesn't really get in the way of gameplay, in that you want to still be able to see where your token is, you want to still be able to control your movement, you want to be able to place lights and walls and templates and all of that stuff without it really stopping you from doing that. So the basic concept with overhead tiles is you'll see, for example, these trees where if you were to normally make a battle map, these trees could do one of two things. Probably what you're most used to experiencing is that you get this beautiful battle map from your favorite battle map creator, and it has these trees on it because it's out in the woods, and you move your token into where the tree is, and suddenly your token is like standing on top of the tree. And we all can suspend disbelief and say, oh, well, I'm not on top of the tree. I'm actually underneath the tree, or I'm hiding inside the tree. But that to a certain extent breaks the immersion of the scene. So what overhead tiles allows you to do is that you can move into the area where the tree is located, and you'll be able to kind of move under the canopy of the tree. And when you're outside, you see the top, and when you're inside, it kind of conceals away in order to allow you to see what you're doing. So, that's the basic premise, but that's only one use case for overhead tiles. That's not the entire system, but that's kind of like the basic idea, is that you'll have things on the map that you can move underneath, and it will allow you to still have gameplay happen without, blocking your view of what is going on. I see someone asking like what's going on with the walling here. So this is also using a terrain wall for the tree. So like I can see the tree, but I can't see what's on the other side of it. This is a feature that Foundry has. It's called terrain walls. So I have put a little circular terrain wall around the tree to say when you're outside the tree, you're not able to see what's on the other side of it. But if you kind of move through or move past, you can see. So that's another feature. It's not a new feature, but it's a way to use terrain walls in combination with overhead tiles to create an obstacle like this tree that looks and feels good when you're using it for gameplay. So that's one portion of overhead tiles, and I'll talk about like how that works in a minute. There are two other important aspects of overhead tiles. The other, one of them is that we didn't just do tiles for overhead tiles. There's a paradigm shift a little bit in terms of how the canvas is rendered, that for now, that paradigm shift allows to support overhead tiles. In the future, it will give us the foundation to support even more vertical levels of a scene, to where you might have like a downstairs of a building and an upstairs of a building all within the same scene, where you go up the stairs and you're suddenly up in the upstairs or in the loft of the building. That type of multiple scene levels in a vertical stack, that's something that we'll be working on in the future, and that is not a feature that this adds. So don't swoon on me just yet. That is not yet a feature that Foundry Virtual Tabletop has, but the investments that we made when creating the overhead tiles system will allow us to do that much more easily in the future. And one of those investments in particular is that the scene is now reorganized into the concepts of a background layer and a foreground layer. And a lot of the action of the scene, so the tokens, the things like light sources, other things, happen kind of as the meat in the middle of the sandwich. So all of the overhead tiles are in the foreground layer. All of the underfoot tiles, the conventional tiles that used to previously exist and still do, those are in the background layer. Now, both the foreground layer and the background layer now has support for a singular image that covers the foreground or background of the scene. So what that means is that what you're seeing here is basically the background. I mean, the foreground is visible too, it's just faded. This is basically what's in the background layer of the scene, and then this is basically what's in the background plus foreground of the scene. And that singular foreground image, it can have the same dimensions as your background image, and it can add lots of foreground features all with a single image. Now, you can also have individual tiles. I have examples of both on this particular map, and I'm going to show you how both of those work. So let me show you like what is the actual like media input that I'm using to do this. I'm going to pull up here. Oh, let's see. Where have I put it? Cartography, Rashar, Forest, Cabin. Okay, so here's an image that is basically the underfoot, the background layer of my scene here. So it's like the actual image, except there's obviously some things missing. There's no treetops, there's no walls for the building, there's no roof of the building. It is literally only the things that would be underneath where the tokens will walk. So this is I made this map myself, and I know that not everyone is a self map maker. Many of you use maps that others create, and you'll be able to use these tools. You'll be able to use overhead tiles with pre-rendered maps, but for the map makers in the audience, whether it's people who just make their own maps for fun, or whether it's people who make maps for professionally, or on Patreon, or what have you, this new system allows a lot of opportunity to change the way that you think about making maps. And so I've used a two-phase export process here, where I exported the underfoot, the background contents of the map only. And that's what I'm using in Foundry. That's what I'm using as the conventional background image of my scene. I'm using that image that's only what's underneath your tokens. Now, I can, and in this case, I am also using what I'll call a foreground image, which is this. Now, this is a WebP, and it's actually transparent. It's just the browser renders it on white. It's not actually white. Everything that you see here is white is actually transparent. And this is what I've called the foreground. It's like a couple of trees in the corner. It is the walls of the building. It's things like that. And this foreground image will be overlaid on top of the background image with the same dimensions, and it will add some additional structure to the scene. So what does this allow me to do? Well, since I have the foreground here, it allows me to, for example, walk up to the edge of the house, and you can see how my token is now like hiding a little bit underneath the eaves of the roof. And actually, I'll remove the roof. Well, I haven't showed roofs yet, so I guess I might as well just go ahead and do that. So let's go into the building for a moment. Let's see what that looks like. If I open the door to the building, I can step inside, and here we are inside the building. Now, as I'm inside the building, you'll notice that I can step underneath certain obstacles. So this like lion head that's mounted on the wall, I can step underneath it. And some other obstacles, like I could kind of crouch in the shadow of the wall. I could be like squeezed up in the corner, and instead of my token being over top of the walls of the building, I'm actually where I would be. I'm kind of squeezed into the corner of the room. Even when I pass through the door, for example. Now, this is a closed door, but you can imagine there's a door frame here. And I'm like halfway in, halfway out of the door frame because of the way that I've rendered this. Anyway, so there's lots of different examples of that. And, standing by the fireplace. Obviously, like, how much this gets used is sort of up to you and up to you as a map maker as far as, like, what level of detail you want to do. But this new system allows for these things where there's objects in the scene that are above where the tokens are moving. And that allows you to do a lot of really great things. So for example, over here in the corner, you see how like the building is casting this shadow on this shrub. For example, I can move into the corner, and that shadow is now cast on top of the token. The token is also in shadow rather than being in light. Or another example is like this smoke from the chimney where, I'm walking underneath the smoke that's billowing out of the chimney. I'm not standing on top of the smoke in a way that just totally breaks the illusion of the scene. So these are all examples of things that you can use this new system to do and have it be much more immersive than what you would have if this were just a flat image that your tokens that you're moving around in the VTT would be simply on top of the image. It's a much more convincing effect. It helps you imagine what's happening better. I think in general, it just really looks great. It looks a lot more realistic. It looks a lot more believable, and it helps you to imagine that you are actually there in that circumstance. So let's talk about, I showed you that, the foreground layer here is just the walls of the building. And that's so that the reason I made those foreground is so that I can, so that I can crouch underneath them like this and be partially underneath the wall. But there are, in addition to that, the desire to have individual tiles. Individual tiles, of course, would be like these little trees that I placed. So the reason I did these trees as individual tiles is because I don't want them always visible. Now that is an option, so each tile that is in the foreground layer. Actually, let me comment for a minute just about like UI, UX. So you had the tiles layer as normal used to have just these 3 buttons, and it still does. And so, suppose that I'm wanting to, place a tree. I can place a tree tile, and placing the tree tile by default, it would go into the background layer. And, it creates this effect where your tokens are then walking on the canopy of the tree. It's not great. But tiles can be moved to the foreground layer, and that would, put them above tokens like this. So you can move your tile back and forth between foreground and background, just in the HUD. Also, when tiles are placed in the first place, there is a toggle in the scene controls for whether you're working on the foreground layer or the background layer. And when you toggle it, it will just fade away the foreground if you're working on the background, and it will show it if you're working on the foreground. So it's just a simple toggle. The UX is not like super complicated. I hope it doesn't need to be, but one of the things that we'll be trying to do with beta testing for this feature is to see like, how's the user experience, how's the workflow, is it working out for people, how's that going for you? So that's the type of feedback, one of the types of feedback that we'll be interested in. So these trees, I made these trees as overhead tiles. Now, why did I make these trees as overhead tiles rather than part of the, part of the foreground image that spans the entire scene? Well, I wanted these trees to be able to occlude, to fade individually, rather than simply always be shown or, be part of a larger group. So each individual tile, when it is in the overhead, in the foreground layer, there's a checkbox for, for is it an overhead tile, yes or no. And if it's an overhead tile, there are, well, eventually, I hope there will be 5 different modes for how that tile behaves. Currently, there are 3 different modes for how that tile behaves, as 2 of them are not yet implemented. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm going to talk about the 3 modes that are already implemented. So that is none, which is always visible. Fade, which conceals the entire tile. Or roof, which behaves quite differently because a roof has some specific assumptions about what it does. And I'll talk about roofs in particular in just a moment. So if I set this to none, for example, what's going to happen when I carry my token Merrick over to the tree is I'm just going to walk underneath it. So the tree itself, the top of the tree does not fade. It stays visible. I just move under it. And for certain types of tiles, that may be what you want. You may want a certain thing to never be concealed. It could be just a little porch roof, or it could be something else where it's not going to prevent your ability for the token to be used. Now, this tree probably isn't a great example of that. But there are plenty of types of overhead assets where you would not want them to disappear when you walk underneath. There is alternatively the fade mode, which when you enter the tile, it will fade away. And that's what I was showing previously with the trees, where once you're underneath it, it will fade. Now, one thing that I'm pretty proud of, Caleb mentions smoke, right? So smoke is a good, I'm actually doing that here. So my smoke from these chimneys, my smoke here is this tile. This is overhead tile. I put some smoke on this chimney, just like so. And my smoke from the chimney, I will set it to none, always visible. So I don't need to fade the smoke away when I walk under the smoke. In fact, I don't want to. I like the idea of the smoke always being there, and so that's an example of a way that I'm using that particular mode. So that's a good example that's actually on this map. So fade will fade the tile partially. Now, one thing that I'm relatively proud of with this system is that it is pretty much like pixel perfect. So you notice that the token here, I'm putting the token frame just outside the actual pixel outline of where this tree is. And even at this close to the tree, it doesn't actually trigger the fading until the bounding box of the token actually enters the pixel area of the tree. So it's very precise in terms of being able to know when your bounding box of the token is actually underneath the tile. It's very precise in that. And I think, you know, that's pretty good. I think it's more than pretty good. I think it's good. There are obviously like continued improvements that can perhaps happen in the future, but I think at a first pass, what the software is doing is it takes the texture of the overhead tile and it caches a much smaller texture of just what are the non-transparent pixels. And it uses that smaller texture of the non-transparent pixels in order to understand if a certain, you know, pixel is contained in that non-transparent texture. And so it's fast. It's like it performs well. There's very like limited impact on performance, which is important because I didn't want the computation of like light and, you know, rendering your token movement and stuff. I didn't want that to be, you know, really slowed down by this. So the performance is pretty good. It's not free, and so I think you should be cautious. You should be frugal about like how many of these types of tiles you incorporate into your map. I would suggest probably not having, you know, hundreds of them, but I think you know, having less than 50 overhead tiles should be pretty good from a performance perspective. I wouldn't necessarily suggest having like more than 50 or more than 100 in a single map, but you know, I think hopefully that seems like a reasonable number of, you know, guidance for people to think about. Okay, Gaming asks, does that mean if you had a transparent circle inside the overhead texture and the token was in the donut hole? Yes, that's exactly what it means. So if you had a ring, I wonder if I have an asset like that in the library. I probably don't. Well, probably do. I just don't know how exactly I'd find it. Let me see if it's a nice question, so I'm going to see if I can actually find an example here real quick. Ring. It's a bunch of like spell effects. Oh, okay, here, this could work. This toadstool ring, this could work. So this is in Chaora Forest Assets. Hopefully I can show an example of this. So I'm gonna make this ring quite a bit larger, like maybe 800. Okay, so I have a toadstool ring here. I'm gonna put it like overhead of the wheat field here. Doesn't have to be logical. So in theory, if I move into the center of the toadstool ring, yeah, so I'm in the donut hole, so to speak, right now, where the overhead tile completely surrounds me, but I'm in the hole of it. And so it is still visible until I move, you know, to a point where it actually collides with the outer ring. So if you had like a roof that's, you know, imagine you've got like a central courtyard where there's a roof, but it's, you know, it's like an old sort of Roman style, you know, building where there's this sort of open air central courtyard in the middle. That would work just fine with overhead tiles, where you would be in that courtyard. You're inside the roof tile image, but you're in the transparent part, and so you would not be triggering it to fade like that. I see a question about like, what if the overhead tile is animated? Would it still work that way? No, at least not right now. It's not going. The pixel detection for the overhead tile, at least for the time being, I haven't done a lot of testing with overhead animated tiles, but it's going to be based on the pixels of like the first frame in theory. It's not going to constantly update like which pixels of the animated tile are active. That is a limitation. That would be really hard to do from a performance perspective. So if it is an animated overhead tile, like what counts as the tile's shape is going to be based on what pixels are visible in the first frame of the tile. So you probably can't have like overhead tiles that change really dramatically. Like you couldn't have a roof that like completely moves its location. If you wanted to animate like the location of a roof, what you'd want to do is actually animate it in Foundry, where it's just a static roof, but you animate its position rather than using like a video. Okay, so that is the fade mode. So let's talk about the roof mode. Roof is at first I tried to approach the problem of roofs to just be like kind of just a normal overhead tile, and it pretty quickly became apparent to me that treating roofs as a normal overhead tile was not going to work well, because there's too many special cases with roofs that needed some extra handling in order to do it. Well, I won't say properly, because people will argue about whether or not I've done it properly, but to even really attempt the solution. So this roof is in roof mode. Now let me show you what happens if I instead change it to like fade. So if we didn't have a roof mode, here's one problem that immediately happens. Light sources that are inside the building, like this fireplace or this fireplace, the light source is now on top of the roof as well. So that's a problem. We don't want our light source to be, to be on top of the roof. This light is inside the building, and so it's underneath the roof, and that's where it should stay. So this is a problem that needed some special tooling in order to solve. Now, why is it that, I didn't just leave it this way? Well, you do want the ability to have, light sources, say, like outside the building. So, suppose I have this, this big, like super bright light here. I like that this light source actually affects the tree. I don't want the tree to be exempt from the light source. I want the light to be shining on the tree as well. So what that meant is that overhead tiles couldn't be strictly on top of lighting, because if the overhead tile was strictly on top of lighting, then it wouldn't really look good. It would. Let me see if I can show you what it would look like. Nope, that didn't do it. Well, I was gonna see if I could maybe show you what it would look like, but I think maybe it'll be hard to do it properly. Oh, wait, I changed the wrong thing. Let me see. Canvas, foreground, Z, index. Let's do 1,000. Okay, so here, if the foreground, oh, what did I do? Sorry, I must have hit the scene transition button. Sorry about that. Oops. I hit my AFK button by accident. Hopefully everything is back to normal now. So if the overhead tiles were above the lighting layer, it would look like this, where the tree canopy would be exempt from the light source. And that's not really great either, because that kind of breaks the effect of, you know, torches that you're carrying or environmental lights that are present. So that's not really a good solution. So we want our overhead tiles to be affected by lights, but roofs are a bit of a special case. Roofs need some special handling because we don't want the light to be on top of the roof like it is here. Another thing that's particularly problematic with roofs is that if I were to just use a non-roof tile, I think I might have to refresh here in order for it to show properly. Yeah, so if I were to use a non-roof tile, here's another problem. This door, which is open, sort of ends up shining the vision polygon into the building because it doesn't have awareness that this roof should be obscuring the interior wall structure of the scene. So there's some complicated issues here with, like, how does the vision polygon work with regards to overhead tiles? But what you're seeing here is this problem of, like, I'm outside the building, but I'm seeing what the interior wall structure looks like as my vision polygon is, like, penetrating through the doorway into the building. That's not really great either. So what the solution there for the roof mode does is it treats this particular tile in a very special way, where the roof tile is going to suppress the light sources that are underneath it, but only the part that is underneath it. So, for example, what that means is that I can have say I have like a torch just inside the building, and it would be like shining out. Let me transition this scene to nighttime so that you can get like a nicer view of what I'm talking about here. I'm going to take away the light that this character has. Okay, it's very dark out. You're on the outside of the building, very dark. You open the door of the building, and then you have the light from inside sort of shining out, which is a nice effect. And so you don't have that light, however, applying to the top of the roof. With the roof gone, the light's inside, it's also shining out, but it's not shining on the roof. And so this is like an important nuance to get right, because if this were not a roof, then you'd have the light shining above the building as well. So there's like a lot of like tricky aspects here of, you know, how to make it sort of behave. But yeah, the other thing that is important about roofs is that I'm going to go back to daylight. Unlike a normal tile, unlike a fade-based overhead tile, where the fade here, it checks collision against the entire frame of the token. That's a normal fade-based tile, that is. So you see here where just my bottom left corner is under the tree, then the tree fades. So that's how a normal sort of fade-based tile works, but for a roof, it does not do that. And that's an intentional difference. And the reason for that is so that, you know, many roofs are designed to slightly overhang the edge of the building. So if we tested for the roof occlusion against the corners of our token, then when I stand here like against the building, then the roof would be faded. And we don't want that. We want the roof to only fade once the center of the token is underneath it. So if I move actually fully within the building, then I get the fading of the roof, but I don't get the fading of that roof until the center point of the token is underneath the tile. So that's just some different nuances here that it needed to be different enough in its behavior that meant that it was important for roofs to be their own different tile mode rather than just some extra setting or something. Okay, so that's overhead tiles. I know that many of you are interested in. I hope you all love what you've seen. I know many of you are interested in very specific things about, can I do this? Can I do that? So I think this is probably a good moment for me to take a couple questions about like how the system works and what it can do and what it can't do. I think it's important to acknowledge that there are things that, aren't necessarily handled perfectly well with this V1 system of overhead tiles. Now, I think as with all other Foundry-related systems, what you see here in terms of the overhead tiles is backed by the API. So there is a full set of APIs for, say, the foreground layer, for doing things like, let me pull up my code here for a minute. So like, for example, the foreground layer itself where overhead tiles are stored, or the tile itself that has methods included in order to do this sort of testing and detection. So like update occlusion or test occlusion or contains pixel. There are API methods exposed as part of this system that will allow modules to do lots of really crazy things. Oh my gosh, AFK button again? Huh. I wonder what's causing that. I do need a safety on that button. Oh dear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. I wonder if it's like some... So I was using this like scene scheduler plugin that like when certain things happen, it like automatically switches my scene. I don't know. Let me see. I'm gonna check something real quick. I'm gonna see if I Alt Tab. I don't know if this is causing it. I don't know. Maybe it's not Alt Tab. Maybe I just hit the button. I don't know. I should probably move those buttons over to like numlock, numpad or something. That might be a safer way to do it. But I'm not going to do that now because I'd have to restart the stream. So just bear with me on that. Let's see. What was I saying? Oh yeah, just that there's APIs to support all of this stuff. So testing whether a tile collides with a certain pixel, or updating the occlusion of the tile, or things like that. The foreground layer itself. Module developers will be able to build using these tools and to create all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, I could use a Stream Deck. That's a pretty good suggestion. I might buy one of those. I know what you're talking about, so yeah. All right, let me see if I can take a couple of questions about overhead tiles. Specifically, I'm only going to answer questions about overhead tiles because there's lots of other stuff in this update that I think needs to be addressed separately. So some questions from Photoply. Are there plans to handle vision or windows or vision into an overhead tile from outside the tile? I do have some plans to see if I can do something like that, but it's not so simple. I think that it might be that I can make that a feature of roof mode, so that, for example, like there's a door here, so that like when this door is open, it might cut away a portion of the roof to reveal to you like what you can see inside the building. That's something that I would like to do. The technical complexity of it, it's tricky. On its own, it's a solvable problem, but the thing is that like the solution has to play nice with every other system, and so it becomes a little bit of a balancing act of like, can I add this feature A without crushing performance, and B, having it play nicely with all of the other features and things that need to happen. So I won't say that there's plans to do it, although it is certainly a suggestion that is in our mind as a thing that would be desirable if we can do it. So another question is the fading done per player view or for all the players? That's a great question. Let me show what multiple players would see here. I should have given a demo of that previously. I usually think to do that, and in this case I did not. All right, I'm gonna swap the music. I've made it all the way through the McRow music sampler, so I'm gonna put on some of the tabletop RPG music stuff for a little bit. Okay, so here for a player. Oh, oops. Sorry. Had multiple, had a little like out of sync state there because of the delay of the load. Okay, I'm just gonna mute the music on the left tab so that it's only playing on the right. Okay, so, on the right is my GM view, on the left is my player view. So for the GM view, when you have no token controlled, all of the overhead tiles fade, because what you might have, for example, is you might have like a monster or something that's like underneath this tree. And so if the overhead tile stayed visible when you have no token controlled, as the GM, you might lose track of a token that you need to be able to use. So for the GM, when you have nothing selected, all of the overhead tiles are concealed like that. But for the player, when you have no token selected, the overhead tiles stay visible. So that's an important difference. So the player will see the overhead tiles always. The GM, those will fade away so that the game master can use it, use the system a little bit more effectively. Now, what the player will see, or what the GM will see, or vice versa, is when the player moves into this tree, the GM still sees from the perspective of whatever token they had controlled. So, like, you might see someone, like, totally sort of go hide underneath a tree because you're viewing from the perspective of this token, or vice versa. There's a little bit of a volume surge there. Yeah, so it is on a per player basis where you see what's faded for your own perspective, but the other users might not necessarily see that. So it is kind of possible to like hide beneath an overhead tile and then sort of jump out at your players, and that is cool. It means you can do some exciting stuff there in terms of like ambushes. But if you don't like that, there is a solution to it, which is I can take this overhead tree and I can make its normal opacity something less than 100%, so that it always reveals a little bit of what's underneath. And then from the player view, you kind of always see a little bit of this token. So there's some things that you can do if you don't want overhead tiles to like completely obscure, the vision of tokens that are like underneath them. You can do that partly by like making the overhead tile itself partially transparent. But we'll be looking for like user feedback in terms of like what's working well, what people like, what they don't like. All right, let me take another couple questions. So one pretty common question is, can you place a token on top of the roof for flying creatures or someone climbing? This is an awkward no at the moment, Wyzad. And the reason it's an awkward no is because having the concept of multiple levels in terms of I can stand at ground level or my, elevation. So here my elevation is 0 and I'm standing at ground level, or now my elevation is 40 and I'm flying in the air and I move on top of the roof, oh, now I'm inside the house. So the interaction of elevation with verticality in terms of like, what should you be standing on top of, that is not part of this update. That is something that will need to wait until we implement support for multiple scene levels, so that when you move to a certain elevation, what actually, like, say previously was the ceiling now becomes the floor, so to speak. In theory, what would be happening here is that when the token is elevated high enough, they would then be walking on top of what might have previously been like overhead, or it's a new background where you might go up to a second story of a building or something. That is part of what we eventually have in mind for scene levels, but it's not part of this particular update. So for the time being, if you have people running around on top of roofs, you're going to have to clumsily approximate that a little bit. Now, there may be some modules that will give you tools to, make this easier for the time being. But what you can do is you can just send your roof to the, to the background layer. That doesn't work well in this case because I'm using the foreground like walls. So it becomes all a little bit like clumsy. So probably at some point, like, your imagination will need to start substituting for some of this. If you have a lot of issue where you like want to use overhead tiles, but you also want certain tokens to be like running around on the top of the overhead tile. That's not something that the core software is going to do for now. Hopefully, eventually. For the time being, I expect there will be some modules that will race out way ahead of us and give you that sort of feature. But we're not doing that for now. All right, let's see. I'm going to scroll to present because I'm like missing a lot of questions. Let's see here. Any plan to improve the tile ordering? Currently, tiles have a z-index of 100 upon creation and are dirty sorted. Blitz, it sounds like you're making a good suggestion that, as far as I'm aware, it's not in GitLab or has been entered there. So rather than like necessarily getting into the details of what you're getting at there, I think probably the best thing for you to do is to submit a GitLab issue for us to think about. Like that's the type of user feedback that we'll want to collect between now and the release version. So please do help us by sharing that feedback. Probably not in Twitch chat because I'm in no position to enter it at the moment. All right. I see. Question: can the players see the roof instead of black fog of war? Good question, Midden. You're all quickly picking out the issues with the system which are harder to do well. So let me reset fog and let's talk about what happens when there hasn't been any exploration yet. So when there hasn't been any exploration yet, the roof is black. Now this is not necessarily what you all would want to be happening. I think many of you would say, well, it's a roof. I should be able to see the roof. And I agree with you. However, it is hard to do this for a couple of reasons. If I allowed you to see the roof, allowing vision of the roof itself would require removing fog of war from the roof. Because what's here right now is fog of war that you have not yet explored this area of the map. If I remove fog of war from the roof, you might say, well, that's, just remove fog of war from the roof. So imagine I removed fog of war from the roof. Just bear with me one second. So, imagine none of this has happened, but magically fog of war was removed from the roof. And so what I'm looking at is this. Well, that's good. I can see the roof. But now the problem is I step into the building for the first time, and the interior of the building is fully explored already. And for larger buildings, that could be a very big problem. So I was stuck between this either or of I can either allow you to see the roof, or I can preserve the uncertainty of what's inside the building. Doing both, at least for the time being, was not possible. Now I'm seeing lots of suggestions posted in chat of, oh, you can just do this. Thank you for those suggestions. However, I hope I can say this respectfully, that this is not an easily fixed problem. So I'm not going to talk about suggestions for how to solve this on stream, but I will be happy to talk about suggestions for how to resolve this during the alpha and beta testing process of this update, which is what the next couple weeks will all be about. So for the next couple weeks, there will be plenty of opportunity for us to discuss potential improvements to the system. But given at the moment what is a trade-off between either preserving the uncertainty of what's inside the building or showing the roof, I have chosen that it is better to not reveal what is inside the building until you actually explore the inside of the building. Now, hopefully in the longer term, we can have both. Hopefully. I don't think it's an impossible problem, but for the time being, that's the decision that has been made. All right. I'm going to take one or two other questions. Actually, I don't really see any other questions. Oh, let's see. There's a question. Can't you just say the magic... Oh, yeah. No, I can't just say the magic spell. Yeah. Question from Justin the Jaguar about what are the other two tile settings that are still under development. So eventually I envision that there will be other settings for radial and vision-based occlusion. Now, radial occlusion, the way that I envision that working is that you'll specify a radius and it's going to cut away just a piece of the tile based on your proximity. That's what I want to do. So imagine that I have imagine this is my radius. So you could imagine just a piece of the tree based on this circle. You could imagine just a piece of the tree being cut away here rather than the whole tree. That's what I would like to do. I started working on it. I wrote some shaders and I got very stuck and it was not working well. So that's why it's not yet ready. But the idea is that there could be a radial-based occlusion where the proximity to your token would start, cutting away at the display of overhead tiles, where only a piece of it would be concealed. And if I were to move, fully within it, the radius that we're talking about here would also adjust and would be concealing all of this tile and maybe some of the adjacent one as well. So that's what radial occlusion would hopefully be if I'm able to crack the puzzle that was preventing me from getting the shader to work properly. The other mode that I'm hoping we can add is vision-based occlusion. So this would be relevant for roofs as well, perhaps, but imagine that the token has a certain angle of vision. I mean, this doesn't necessarily need to be an angle of vision, but suppose the token has a 90-degree arc of vision. What I might be able to do with this mode is conceal tiles for anything that the token can be seen by a token. So your vision polygon looks something like this, just approximating it, that the vision polygon sort of looks like this. that this area is the one that would end up being, being removed from the overhead tiles. So any overhead tile that intersects with this vision polygon, like those would be faded away as part of this mode. Similar to the reason why, radial occlusion wasn't accomplished yet, this is also complicated, and so I was not able to crack the solution to this just yet. But hopefully I will. Hopefully, but we'll see. I can't make guarantees on that because it is hard. All right. Tabletop RPG Music, who I will always answer questions from, especially when I'm playing your beautiful music at the same time, thank you so much, asks the question of, does anything weird happen when you stack overhead tiles, especially if they have different rules? Yes, so let's look into that. So suppose I have 2 trees here, 1, 2. All right, so first thing is about stacking. Now I can control which of these tiles is like above the other. So that, I have ways to like bring to front or send to back to, affect like which tree is above the other tree, so to speak, visually. Now I could have like this brownish tree be on like a fade-based occlusion, and I could have this greenish tree be on like none or no occlusion. And so you will be able to have interaction where like you can have multiple overlapping overhead tiles with different rules. At least that's the intention. It's pretty simple in this case where, one just like doesn't fade. But yeah, the reason why the occlusion mode is configured at the individual tile level is so that you can have, like one tree faded but not the other, or vice versa, or some intersection where they're both faded. So that is possible. I think it's pretty well supported. Okay, let's see. I think I better move on in the interest of time. While I'm still talking about tiles, however, there is one other tile improvement that I really want to highlight. And that is the improvements to animation. So one of the things that you'll notice is that video tiles now have a separate section called animation, where you can configure whether they loop, whether they autoplay, and if they have built-in volume, what happens in terms of the volume level of those playing tiles. So this is a little video. It's just a drifting around little drift globe. It's green because I have a tint applied to it. Someone in our Discord made this little like drift globe, as I like to use it as like a dancing lights spell or something. But yeah. Anyways, so one thing that's new is that you actually have video playback controls for video tiles now. So when I open the HUD, I have a play pause that I can use to manually control the playback of animated tiles. So if you have like a tile that you want to use it as like a one-time animation, maybe it's like a trap, like the trap like springs out of the wall, or it could be like a collapsing floor, like the floor collapses away and reveals a pit, or it could be a secret door where the secret door slides open and opens the wall. These types of effects, previously they were kind of awkward with tiles because the tile would automatically, and without really giving you a choice, the tile would loop. Oops, that's a little bit intense. Yeah, so, what you we'll have for animated tiles is by default they will loop, and by default they will play. So, normally it would just be this, where the drift globe's, drifting around, it doesn't stop, it just keeps going forever. You can, however, now, and I put up the player view and the GM view so that you can see that these are synchronized. Well, not synchronized in terms of the animation is exactly synchronized, but synchronized in terms of like when I pause it, it pauses for the player as well. So when I play it, it plays for the player. So, what you might have is you might have tiles that they don't loop and they don't autoplay. And that can let you have like the sliding secret door or the collapsing pit trap or something. And, while this is not a sliding door or a collapsing pit, in this case, it's just a still frame image until such a time as I play the animation, and then the animation is going to play once, and then when the animation is done playing, it will stop on its final frame. So you can have like a scripted tile animation that will play once as part of like a signature moment of your scene. So that's another key improvement for tiles. All right, I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'm going to take my sort of halfway point break, and we'll do a license key giveaway. But I hope you've all enjoyed this like in-depth look into overhead tiles and how they work, and I hope you're all very excited about this new system and some things that it will make it possible to do with your maps. I'm really excited to use it as a DM and to experience it as a player, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the amazing things that I know that people in the community are going to create with this system and with others as well. So I'm really excited to see that. I think before I do the giveaway, I'm going to cover some of the other changes to the canvas. The canvas meaning what is rendered on the view. And I think the other big changes here are to vision rendering. So I've made some changes to vision rendering, which I expect are probably going to be a little bit, I don't know that I'd say controversial, but I don't know, it might take some persuading to get everybody on board that these are good changes. We debated internally about these quite a fair bit. So let me show some of the things that I've done here. So here's like an empty scene. So one thing you'll notice is that I've more clearly accented the... ooh, it's getting a little loud. I've more clearly accented the differentiation between the scene space, the inner rectangle of the scene dimensions, and the buffer space, the outer rectangle of the padding. So padding is probably the thing that many of you love to hate the most about scene configuration in Foundry. I know some people like it, and probably we're in the minority. Some people hate the padding and think it just makes everything complicated, and you might not be wrong. Now, if you have no padding, your scene is the same. The scene space and the canvas space is the same. If you have padding, you get this extra buffer area where you can use it for things like, staging. Say I've got some like monsters that I'm going to be bringing in a little bit. So I'm going to just, put my monsters up here, and, I'm going to use those in a little bit. Now, I like having this extra space that is outside of the main map image where I can, I can do things, but it does make things a little bit more complicated. But a change we've made is that we changed vision to now mask the padding in this way from a token's perspective or from a player perspective. So previously what would happen is that the player could see straight into the padding. And could be sometimes useful, but more often than not, being able to see straight into the padding caused problems for people. So that no longer happens. However, it's not permanently masked because you could perhaps have a token that strays into the padding. So if you have a token that actually walks into the padding, and that's not prevented, there's no actual wall. Of course, if you want to prevent it, you can always draw a wall, like if you want to wall your players in. But if you don't do that, there isn't anything that actually prevents like wandering into the padding, in which case it will become revealed, at least the portion of it that your character can see. But, you know, anyway, so let me show like what this looks like when vision is actually limited in some way. So suppose we have like 40 feet of vision and that's it, and I'll take away unrestricted vision range. So here, you know, I'm exploring the scene, and when I stray into the padding, I will also be able to see the portion of the padding that my vision would permit. But only until, you know, only while I'm actually in the padding. If I come back in bounds, then it gets concealed automatically. So let's talk about like what that looks like in an actual map. So in an actual map, and I'm going to take away, I think it's easier to explain if I take away the unrestricted vision range. So suppose I'm exploring this map. I'll be exploring the map image until such a time as I walk into the padding, and then I get to see part of the padding, but only while I'm there. When I come back in, I'm sort of walled off again. So what this means is that if a tile, for example, like the tile overflows the map, you'd see the excess tile if you're in the padding, but not if you're in the map. Or if you have say you have a light source that's like coming in from sort of off screen, like maybe, oh, there's a shaft of pale moonlight that is, you know, that's illuminating the scene. What's happening here? Why is that not working? I think I might have found a bug. It's never a dev stream if I don't find a couple bugs in the process. So yeah, so suppose there's this like, you know, moonbeam sort of just off screen. That light is going to be, you know, it's going to be masked by the canvas while you're on the canvas, but if you stray off into the padding, then you have the whole sort of light source there as well. So anyways, that's the change. I think it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, and probably not everyone's going to love it, but I think overall it avoids some of the key issues that we've seen in terms of user experience and unexpected outcomes and things like that. So, you know, that's what's happened there. And yeah. So that's one change. There is a couple other really important changes for vision that I want to emphasize. Although it's a little bit hard to do it properly, because what this actually is a fix for a very important bug. So there was an important bug that many of you have experienced. It's pretty rare, but it can happen, where if you have very distant objects, so I'm going to make like some walls here. Oops. If you have very distant objects that are like quite a far ways away from your character, and this probably won't end up being like a great example, but you know, hopefully you can use your imagination and you'll get the sense of what I'm trying to say. There was a vision bug where very distant objects would sometimes not result in the correct vision computation, and they would inadvertently like reveal you know, some of what they shouldn't reveal. Now this is a little bit hard to show because these are all like irregular shapes. Actually, maybe it'll be easier if I make them all like predictable squares. So suppose we have some known obstacles. I'm just going to draw them like with drawings, so like everyone can know where they are, since I'm not actually using a map. Suppose we have some distant obstacles like this. Oops. All right, now let me wall those in real quick. Anyways, I probably could skip a lot of this. The long story short is that this is a bug that has been fixed, and it will result in more faithful, more accurate vision polygon rendering without it cutting the corners of these distant objects. What you would have seen before is that some of these distant objects would have like a chunk cut out of them that shouldn't have been revealed, but was kind of being revealed. And so it's been a really important bug to fix, and it's taken quite a while to get that fixed. And I would just say thanks to everybody for your patience on, you know, having a bug with the way that vision is rendered. It creates a bad time for everybody. So here's the rays that are being cast to compute the vision distance. The algorithm that's being used here, there's been some really nice improvements to it that make sure that those distant objects are... you gotta be kidding me. Now, I'm quite confident that I did not hit my AFK button at this point, so something is going wrong with my like broadcast setup that's causing those AFKs. I'm gonna have to like look into what's going on there. I apologize to all of you for the disruption. Yeah, some wireless keyboard in the closet. Anyways, so these are the vision rays, and I don't really know how else to explain this other than to say that the algorithm has improved quite a fair bit. And so the way that the site is computed in order to get that polygon now is going to more accurately capture all of those relatively distant objects. So yeah, I'm hopeful that that's a great improvement for everybody. Okay, so there it happened again. I wonder, what did I just do? I like changed the scene. I promise I'm like not hitting my keyboard here, so I really don't know what to say is happening here. It's really a mystery. Is it like the adjusting the volume or something? I don't know. I'm really gonna I'm gonna have to. Oh, you know what? It might be that. Yeah. Okay. I'm just being dumb. I think F12 got bound to something in OBS that it shouldn't be. So maybe on my break I can change that keybind. I'll probably do that during my AFK. That probably is the issue. So it probably has to do with opening the dev tools. If I open them with Control-Shift-I, then yeah, I think that's what it is. All right, mystery solved. Thank you all for both putting up with my clumsy broadcasting technique as well as with you know. Well, whatever else. Let's see. Other Canvas stuff. I think that's probably it for now. On the Canvas side of things. Maybe I'm forgetting a few things, but I think that is actually a great point to take a break and to do a giveaway. So let me actually go AFK actually intentionally for now. I'm going to go for about 5 minutes. I'm going to use the restroom, get something to drink. And then when I get back, I'm going to do a license key giveaway. So how that's going to work is if you are here in the Twitch chat, and I really am amazed, there's like 700 of you, 750 of you, it's freaking incredible. I am going to grab all of your usernames. So you have to be logged into Twitch in order to be eligible for the giveaway. If you're logged into Twitch, I'm going to grab your username. I'm going to create a roll table, and we'll do some free license key giveaways as part of this. And yeah, I will be back in probably about 3 to 5 minutes in order to do that. I'll do the giveaway, and then I've got like a bunch of new other stuff that's in 082 that I'm excited to chat with you all about. So I will be back in just a minute. You don't need to type anything. You don't need to put anything in chat. All you need to do is be logged in, and you will be eligible. So I'll be doing the giveaway in about like 5 minutes. So if you go AFK as well, be sure to be back in time because you have to be here in order to accept if you win. Okay, I'm going AFK for real this time, not unintentionally, and I will be back in just a little bit. 3 to 5 minutes, we'll do that giveaway. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back. See you in a minute. right. I am back. I did it. I got my break in, and I created a wonderful roll table with all of you who are signed in to Twitch included. And that's 654. It might be a record, to be honest. I think maybe we've had low 700s once in the giveaway, but this is close to a largest giveaway that we've ever done. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, so the good old, we're going to break out the good old D654. You know, the hex sync something hedron. Yeah, my favorite die. It's just a big ball. Yeah, so I'm going to roll. I'm going to do 2 or 3. We'll see how the first 2 go. Maybe I'll do 3. I don't know. And I'm going to give away some license keys. So if you win, you can either claim the license for yourself, you can claim it to give it to a friend, or you can pass if you're feeling generous and you'd like to give someone else a chance. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and roll 2 times for 2 winners, and if your name is drawn, you will need to confirm that you would like the prize by typing something in chat. Okay, everyone break out your lucky talisman or whatever you use to channel luck in your favor, and here we go. Oh yes, Morgans, as well as Zepho09. Morgans and Zepho09. The 2 of you are the lucky winners if either of you are here and wish to claim a prize of a Foundry Virtual Tabletop Software license key. I'm going to watch chat for a minute and see if I see an acceptance. Looking. Okay. Oh, someone says Zepho wrote something. Let's see. Did I miss it? I'm just staying tuned. Zepho, I accept. Congratulations. Thank you very much. You are the lucky winner, and I will be getting in touch with you. Just going to see if Morgans is here, and if not, I will roll again. Give like 5 more seconds. All right, 1 for 2 is pretty bad. 1 for 2 is pretty good. Sometimes we have to roll like many times before we actually succeed in giving something away. So I'm pretty happy with 1 for 2. Let's give it about 10 more seconds. And I think I will give 3 keys away today. So I'm going to do 2 more rolls, assuming Morgans does not accept. Okay, time's up. I'm going to roll 2 more times. 2 more rolls. So you've got 2 more chances to win. Here you go. Ooh, Feats of Dice and Deck Starglow. Feats of Dice and Deck Starglow. Lucky winners. Let's see if Deck Starglow or Feats of Dice are in desiring of a Foundry Virtual Tabletop Software license. Fuck you, slow mode. I accept. We have to use slow mode a little bit, otherwise it's impossible for me to see if someone's accepting or not. So it works out in your favor as well. Congratulations, Deck Starglow. Did we get anything from Feats of Dice? All right. I'm not seeing anything. All right. 5 seconds. 5 seconds for Feats of Dice, and then I'm rolling again. Okay, I think I'm going to roll again. Let's see if we can get a third winner. Ooh, quick one. Captain Woomy. Number 90. Lucky number 90. Captain Woomy. We'll see if you accept. Tabletop RPG music. This track is in memory of Feats of Dice. RIP. F for respect. Foundry VTT, I accept. Captain Woomy, congratulations. You are now the happy owner of a Foundry VTT software license. So that is our 3 winners. We've got Captain Woomy, Deck Starglow, and Zepho09. I'm going to keep those 3 in chat so that I can remember them for later. Congratulations to all of the winners. Let's talk about the music. Awesome music from Tabletop RPG Music and McRow Music, both of which have exclusive content packs on Foundry Virtual Tabletop. You should download them. But no, congratulations to the winners. I will you please reach out to me on Twitch. What you'll need to do is, step 1, create a user account on the Foundry website. If you don't already have one. If you already have one, that's fine. You can use that. But need to create an account on the website, and then send me a message on Twitch letting me know that you were one of the winners, and let me know your username on the Foundry website, and I will issue you your winning keys. So congratulations to the 3 of you, and so let's go ahead and get on with the rest of the overview stream. There's lots more features to cover. I want to talk about music next, actually. So with music, that was a big focus of last update, 0.8.1, and I think I've really been happy with how well it's been performing in 0.8.2 testing. There was one particular area that was not doing great, and that was working with very large audio files. So there is a new solution, a new system in 0.8.2 to make it much easier to work with very large files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use as an example, I think I have one. Yeah, okay. So I've got here the Halls of Balthorg from Dark Raven Games. Dark Raven makes really cool ambience and atmospheres and stuff like that. So Halls of Balthorg is it's like a goblin dungeon. There's like chains rattling and goblins screaming, and think it's like very Mines of Moria. Probably it's called Halls of Balthorg rather than Mines of Moria purely for intellectual property reasons. But the idea is pretty similar. And so yeah, it's like a 60-minute ambience, and the file is like 140 megabytes. So it's a pretty large audio file, very large audio file, really. In 0.8.1, that would not have worked with the new audio system. But in 0.8.2, what happens is we're using a new approach for how we construct the audio node. that is used. So let me go ahead and play Halls of Balthorg. And I don't know if you can hear that on stream or not, but it pretty much like immediately started. There was like basically no delay. And that's because what's happening here is I'm using a new approach when encountering an audio file that we have not played before. So when encountering an audio file that we haven't played before, we're going to first do a pre-flight check to test the duration and the size of the audio file using the HTML streaming API. And if the audio file is very large, instead of creating the audio buffer like we do normally for small files, we're instead not going to create a buffer, and we're instead going to create a media streaming node that will just stream the file directly. Now, I think the buffer nodes are nicer because they have a little bit more control of things you can do with them, and they're cached in memory so that if you stop the track, if you start the track, you can have like full control over, over the aspects of playback. So the buffer nodes are still used for small audio files, but we always check the first time that we encounter an audio file to see if it's large. And if it's very large, we're going to stick with the streaming approach and not go the buffer route. Currently, I believe that line is drawn at either 5 or 10 megabytes. I gotta actually check. I need to 10. Oh, it's not based on file size. It's based on playback duration. So 10 minutes. If the track is longer than 10 minutes long, the default behavior is that we will stream it rather than buffer it. If the track is less than 10 minutes long, we'll just go ahead and buffer it. Now you can configure that, and the API can change what that cut point is. So if you want that threshold to be shorter, like if you want more streaming and you want to say, let's stream anything that's longer than a minute, you can configure that in the API. So yeah, it's a big change, and it took a lot of work to do that. So yeah, it's not part of the reason it's not really about file size is like you have to download the data one way or the other. So it's really about like the computational, the CPU required to compute the waveform. Large files generally just mean like higher quality as well as higher quality as well as possibly longer duration, in terms of file size. But in terms of like what was causing the problems is that the CPU, the utilization of CPU and memory ended up being the big problem. Memory would like expand a lot when constructing a very long waveform for the buffer. So that's why like duration is kind of the key dimension to gate on. Okay, so that is a pretty big change, and it affects the sound node and audio container APIs that the software uses. But I'm excited about that. I think it's going to make audio just continue to work really, hopefully, extremely smoothly for all of you. All right, let's see here. I'm trying to think if there's any... Beckett, good question about detecting a streaming URL. I think it will work, although I have to be honest, I didn't specifically test this during 082 development. What would be really great, Beckett, is if you can get in touch with me like after we get 082 released during the testing process. Like let's test that. I think in theory it should work, because what should happen is that if it's a streaming URL, then the duration would either be undefined or I presume it wouldn't give a finite duration. And the logic that's being used is like use a streaming node unless there's a finite and short duration. So I'm guessing for a streaming URL, it would not give you a finite and short duration. And so probably it would stay on the HTML the streaming node, which I think would work just fine. But haven't tested it, so I think that would be a great thing to do some testing on as part of the testing process. So Optical Shadows asks a question about, like, will we see functionality of muffled sounds behind walls? Yeah, so one of the things that's really cool about using the new Web Audio API is that it supports this type of audio node being attached to a certain sound. So, like, basically, I think what's done a lot of the time, I'm not an audio engineer, so anyone in the audience who is, please excuse my ignorance if I, like, abuse some terminology or get something wrong. But I think a lot of times for that sort of muffling, like, there's concepts of, like, a low pass filter that can be applied to the waveform that will transform the way that it sounds to make it sound as if it's, like, more distant or, like, coming through some some obstruction. And that type of, like, low pass filter, or any other sort of, like, waveform filter that gets applied to the audio, is supported in the Web Audio API. So you can have this sort of, like, filter node that would apply to a certain sound that would allow for things like the auditory experience of, like, something coming through a wall. Now, that's not something that the software does by default, like, natively right now, but the API that the software is using, it does that. It supports that. So I think, like, definitely a new generation of modules, and then possibly the core software in the future will be able to use that technique to create effects like that, like a muffled sound. Yeah, basically we just make the audio pixels more blurry. That's right, Custom. It's a good analogy. All right, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to audio that I need to showcase. I don't think so. Let me just search in the notes. Yeah, no, that's it for audio. While I'm on the topic, let's talk about some other changes to the sidebar. So one change to the sidebar that hopefully you'll be pleased with is that at long last, after several years of Foundry being in development, you can finally pop out the chat tab. So hopefully that's a relief for those of you who have been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Yeah, so you can pop out the chat tab now. So yeah, there's not much else to say about that. You can roll from either the popped out or the non-popped out. When you change your roll mode, it's sort of synchronized. It will change in both places. Adding or removing messages will also sync in both places. So yeah, I don't know. It does what it says it does. I guess I just deleted my winners from the giveaway, but I can look at the VOD to get the screenshot of those. I think I have them written down. So one of my moderators will help make sure I get the winners to the right people. Yeah, so that's a feature. It's simple, but I just had been dragging my feet on implementing it because some of the little, like, interactions of the chat tab were more complicated than other tabs for popping out. So yeah, that's a good thing that you can pop out chat right now. It's handy if you want to have, like, a little dice roll entry box or something somewhere else on the screen. Let's see. Other sidebar changes. I don't think there's too much else for the sidebar. There is, in the configure settings menu, there is now a configure default token settings. So this is another new feature that they allow you to customize the initial values for certain token attributes when new actors are created. So hopefully this will save you all a bit of time in like configuring individual tokens by setting some defaults. So for example, suppose I want my tokens to all have, well, just for the hell of it, it doesn't really make any sense, but suppose I want all of my tokens to like come pre-outfitted with a torch that's being used. I can set that up in these settings, and I can set up like to always show their nameplate and always show their health bar, and then I can save that. And then what will happen is when I create a new actor, like a new character, or perhaps a new NPC, those new characters and NPCs will like have that that configuration automatically for their tokens. It also affects actors that you import from a compendium. So suppose like I go and import the bandit or the bearded devil. I'm going to import the bearded devil from the compendium. The bearded devil will also get those default token settings applied to it. So yeah, that's just a convenience feature that will hopefully speed things up for those of you who are, needing to, run games and configure things. I know it always takes me as a DM, it always takes me a little while to like make sure all my bars and stuff are set up properly. So this should hopefully speed things up because, you'll just get that more or less for free. Although I notice, and I think this is more of a bug than like something I need to fix, if I drop straight from the compendium onto the canvas, it's like not doing it. But if I first, import the actor and then go from the actor to the canvas, it is. So, there's probably like a little bit of testing that needs to happen as well. But that's why it's alpha. Alpha testing, folks, alpha. All right, let's see. I'm trying to think of other changes to highlight in terms of like UI interface. Oh yeah, another one is inside. This is a great one that Cody worked on, a new team member. I'll showcase some other features that he built soon as well. But inside the game settings tab, there's now an edit world dialogue. So like your world description, scheduling of your next session, the background image, the world title, you can now edit these things from within the world rather than needing to return to setup in order to do that. So if you need to like make some new notes about your world or when the next session is or whatever, you can set those directly from inside the world now instead of having to log back out. So yeah, that edit world button is right there in the settings sidebar. Good question about setting a recurring session schedule automatically, Hydral. That's not currently supported, although it's a nice idea to do that. Hopefully, as far as like questions about the Forge, hopefully what the Forge and our other hosting partners can do is they can catch this configuration. Like when this thing is submitted, it's going to send a request to the server, and our hosting partners should be able to pick up on that and be able to see that you've just submitted like a next session time. And if you make that change, then hopefully the hosting partners will pick up on it. I think it should really be feasible. Oh, I see someone saying secret doors. Yeah, I forgot to say anything about secret doors previously. So there's not like a big change to secret doors, but there is a new icon. So suppose I make this door a secret door. The icon used to display the secret door is new. There's like this sort of dashed line around the door icon, so it looks different than a regular non-secret door. So when both doors are closed, as the game master, it's easier to tell the difference between the secret door and the non-secret door. So that's like a nice little thing. They both look the same when opened, though. There's not like an open secret door and an open non-secret door icon, but when closed, the door icons are now different for those two types. Let's see. Other good stuff to highlight. Some of this stuff is like nice little changes, but maybe not so very important. This is a nice one that Cody did. So in the journal, your journal entries, when you're editing a journal entry, actually there's a couple of things related to journal entries that I'll touch on while I'm here. The first one is when you go to insert an image, it now will use the default Foundry file picker instead of whatever TinyMCE was shipping. So you can now sort of easily find your files that way. TinyMCE supports like an integration. There's like a Z index. There's like I guess we have to make sure that the Z index is always like the modal. But anyways, yeah, this is better. This is definitely much better that you can like choose choose the image that you're wanting to insert into your journal entries using the Foundry file picker. Definitely a nice enhancement. Another important improvement for the journal was a fix of a very pesky bug where like you would have an actor linked. Sorry, I didn't mean to close that. You would have an actor linked in... weird. It's weird that it took so long to like boot the editor in that case. I don't know what that was. But when you would like press Control Z, it would like undo your actor link and it would like break the link. It's the same thing could happen with, with like inline roles where, if you had an inline role and you go back into the editor and then you like undo, it would somehow like break the link. And fortunately that no longer happens because I reset the memory state of the TinyMCE editor when you start a fresh editor session, and so it prevents you from like undoing that kind of embedded text thing. Let's see. Lots of API improvements. I'm probably not going to get into many of them, although it might be interesting to think about scheduling like a follow-up stream or Discord chat or something with the dev community to like get into the details of some of the API changes, because there's some like good ones in here that I think are like pretty substantial. Let me go ahead and move on to talk about some of the packaging improvements that we made, because I think that's a key theme of like the update. Oh, nice, Nath. So there you go, Beckett. Nath says that his IceCast server does seem to work in 08 too, so that's cool. So I'm going to return to setup here because there's some nice improvements there. I guess I need to... Interesting. Too much running at once. I think I broke something maybe. I'm not sure what. I'll have to see if I can reproduce that later. It's not a dev stream without at least a couple of little bugs. Okay, so back on the home page, a couple of little improvements here. Most of them are behind the scenes though, so I'm not really sure that I'll be able to showcase them that well. But one that's important is when you edit a world on the home screen, we replaced there was previously a option for launch with modules, disable all modules. That has been combined with a couple of other features and renamed as launch in safe mode. And what launching in safe mode does is it disables your active modules. It disables your active scenes in case there's something on your current scene that was causing the application to fail to load. It stops any playing audio. So all of your audio sources that were playing will be no longer playing, your playlists and stuff. I think it's just those three things for now. But basically, either way, this feature is designed as get me into my world safely in case something in there was broken by turning off things that might have been, causing a problem. So you can launch your world in safe mode, and it will, if you're having any trouble with your world, it will get you back in there with pretty much everything disabled, and that will make it easier, hopefully, to fix any issues that you might have encountered. Let's see. Other stuff that was added. So this is going to be a little bit tricky to explain. Well, actually, let me start with the lock. So one thing we added is that you can now lock modules. So suppose you don't want to update a module. Suppose I never want to update to a new version of About Time. There probably is a new version of About Time. There's always a new version. Oh, yes, it happened. I did not plan this. I actually did not plan this. Okay, let's talk about it for a minute. Although, wait, why is it telling me this? It's the same URL. Cody, what'd you do? I gotta check this now. What's happening? Yeah, it's the same one. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's a bug. I don't know. But let's talk about what's happening here. Basically, what sometimes happens is that a module experiences a change of ownership or a fork, where maybe a package is abandoned, but someone else takes it over, or it continues on, but it continues on with a new version or a new location or something. So what this feature allows to do is when you check a package for an update, if the Foundry web server where the package listing is configured now points to a different location for the manifest, it will prompt you with the opportunity to switch and to use that new version instead. So that is what happened there. And so that can give a way for people to make sure that their packages are always looking for the latest good version of the code that they can get. And this will avoid situations where we've had to in the past ask the community you need to uninstall the old version of your package and install a new version from a different location because they're now different in some way. This provides a way for you to kind of get onto the different track for the package. So yeah, that's a great feature. Another really cool new feature is the ability to lock modules now. So if you don't want to update certain modules, you can click this lock button, and I guess that's an interesting one. So if I just updated, it wouldn't let me lock. So that's maybe something we can look into. If I check update, yeah, it's going to prompt me again here, it looks like. So there's some sort of loop going on with About Time. That might be a good one to look into. But you can toggle this lock, and the lock will make it to where those locked modules are not going to be automatically updated when you like say update all or check for updates. Although we might have to look into it because it seems like it's maybe not doing exactly what we expect. But the idea is that you'll lock and unlock these modules, and when they're locked, they would not be receiving updates if you check them. But yeah, we'll follow up and see like what's happening with some of the little kinks here. But it's a new feature, and it's going to allow you to like prevent from accidentally rolling off of a version of a certain module that you don't ever want to like change off of. So yeah, that's a really cool one. The other cool thing that we did is the compatible core version of each package, which is what's generating these like warnings of like, is it compatible with the current version or not? That single field can now be updated purely on the Foundry website if you want to. So if the Foundry website is informed that a package is compatible with a more recent core version, then your local Foundry install will start to use that metadata to no longer warn you that the package is incompatible. So if, for example, a new version like 0.8.2 comes out and an author realizes, oh, I don't need to make any changes to my module, it's still compatible, it's still working, they can just update that on the website without needing to cut a new package release. You'll just be able to update the website only, and that will be sufficient. So there's some great changes there in terms of improvements to the to the package management aspect of the Foundry software. Very exciting stuff on that front. Okay. Let's see. What else? Oh, let's talk about icons. So icons, very exciting. In the public folder of the package of the Foundry software, there is now several new directories of icons. So commodities, which existed before, consumables, vegetables, like look at all these vegetables, amazing, tons of different vegetable icons, potions, so many potions, so many different potions. Plants, nuts, mushrooms, meat, grains, fruit, food, eggs, and drinks. We've got containers. I think containers were there before. We've got certain creatures. If you just need like something to represent a creature on short notice, there's like lots of like little, these could be parts of creatures. They could be, reagents that are harvested from creatures. They could be just used to stand in as a token for a creature itself. There are icons of environmental places. Like there's some more like creature parts. There's some more people, settlements, traps, wildernesses. Magic, which is a huge folder. There's so many magic icons. Look at like we invested a ton of effort to name and sort and organize these icons for you. I really hope that effort is acknowledged and appreciated by the community, because the starting point for these icons was completely uncategorized, no naming conventions of any sort, no standardization in terms of file types. We did a huge amount of work to standardize these. So like magic, death, like look at all of these sort of like necromancy and death related icons that you can use for spells and spell effects. And they are categorized, they are named so that you can search for them. It's really amazing work. Holy, fire, earth, life, light, lightning, we spent a lot of time figuring out like what's the right way to categorize all of this stuff. And I think I'm really proud of how it came out. I think it's really going to make it easy for people to find a spell effect or an item artwork or whatever, what have you, that you can use to represent just a certain concept. So yeah, a lot of work went into this one. But yeah, all of these new icons. Oh, let's talk about the creature. Let's see. Creatures. Let's see. Let's look at like claws. All kinds of different like claw attacks for things that your monsters are doing. I feel like there should be. I'm trying to remember like where it ended up, but I thought there was like a mouths, like a bites. I guess all the bites, the mouths ended up within abilities, but I don't know. Maybe we'll reorganize if need be. But anyways, there's like lots of different icons for like stuff biting stuff, for webs and tentacles and all kinds of different like monster abilities that you might use. So yeah, and the best part of all is that they're highly optimized as 256 pixel WebP images. Each individual icon is around 2 to 4 kilobytes in size. The entire icons directory that ships with Foundry is now 5,000 something icons, and it's only about 34 megabytes. So the size of what you're downloading when you download Foundry is still nice and small, but you got 5,600 icons to play with. All right, let's see. I think I'm getting pretty much down to the end of the list for like major features in this update. So I think what's left is to talk a little bit about some of the API improvements. So I think, this may end up being a little bit less dramatic, a little bit less fun for some of you. Although for the developers in the group, I do want to just talk through some of the API improvements and bug fixes, just to comment on a couple of things. When you're creating new documents, you can pass document data structures directly instead of just the vanilla object. We expanded the maximum recursion depth allowed for expand object and flatten object operations. We improved the computation of tracked attributes. This actually isn't strictly an API improvement. We should highlight this in features as well, because it does have a user-facing component here. So we made it to where, suppose like encumbrance is a derived attribute, it's not actually stored in the base data model. If you track a derived attribute on the token bar, it becomes non-editable. So I can still track it as my bar, but I can't make changes to this value the way I would do if it were like a health bar. So that's a change in that, like, we prevent you from being able to incorrectly edit fields that are strictly derived. So that's a nice little change. Some of these are a little bit boring. This is an important one. Let's talk about, hopefully you can see this okay. I'm going to zoom in here. So suppose you have a certain actor, like the one that I'm hovering on right now. One thing that is a very frequent need for developers to do is to convert the actor's data to a copy safe or serializable data structure. So previously, each actor has like a to.json, but that kind of implies semantically that you're trying to convert the actor to JSON. Sometimes what you're trying to do is just get the actor's data, and sometimes you need the source data, like unaffected by modifiers, active effects, derived data. Sometimes you need the derived data. So there's now a toObject method where you can get the source data unaffected by derived data, derived rules, active effects, or you can get the derived data that would have that stuff in there. So for example, if I get the source data, and this is all as a copy safe object, so source data attributes encumbrance versus, let's see here. I actually thought that would not be... Oh, that's because this is an old actor. So this old actor hasn't been migrated yet. Let me create a new... Well, I don't even need to show this. But basically, anytime that you have source data versus derived data, this toObject method lets you get a copy safe version of that object that you can use to, render character sheets, to create new objects, to save to disk, to export, whatever you need to do. So for the developers in the group, hopefully you'll see why that might be useful. There's a new perception manager class. This is important for those of you who are creating modules that are using the canvas. The perception manager standardizes the way that perception refreshes are handled. So what do I mean by a perception refresh? Anything that tracks on the canvas the visual state of what is being perceived. So for example, this token sees in a radius around it. It sees this vision arc that's coming out of the building. It sees that there are overhead tiles that it is partially underneath. It hears the location of nearby sounds. The perception manager is accessible as canvas.perception. It's a singleton instance of the perception manager. And instead of calling individual refresh or initialize methods on all different canvas layers, all of that logic is now centralized. So what you can do is, for example, call canvas perception refresh, and that will manually trigger a refresh of all of the vision polygons of, the light sources, the overhead tiles, whatnot. So if you make a change to the canvas and you need to cause that change to update the vision of tokens, Canvas Perception Refresh will do that. Even better than Canvas Perception Refresh, the whole system is optimized for batching of many calls. So suppose you animate, or you have multiple tokens, each of which have their own vision polygon. Like here I've got 3 vision sources that are active. I could call Canvas Perception Refresh 3 times if I was doing something in a loop, but I can do much better than that. There's now Canvas Perception Schedule, and this allows you to schedule a batched refresh of all different aspects of perception, which will prevent the software from doing lots of needless work. So imagine, for example, I've got 3 tokens that I select and unselect. Let me show you an applied example of what this means. So there's certain logic that needs to happen when you control a token. When you assume control over a token, we need to refresh your site. We need to refresh the appearance of lighting. We need to refresh what sounds you hear because of what's near you. We need to refresh the appearance of overhead tiles because you might be underneath one. So when you control a token, we need to do that. But what happens if you control 3 tokens all at once? Well, without batching for this, it would end up repeating that needless effort in terms of recomputing all of that stuff multiple times. So if you use Canvas Perception Schedule instead of Canvas Perception Refresh, you can schedule refreshes to occur when the next rendering frame occurs. And that way, if like 3 tokens are all released at exactly the same time, you're not duplicating that work. You're just updating to say like, we need to do this. Oh, we need to do this 3 times. You still need to do it. So anyways, this is like a little bit low level, but for those of you who are working on Canvas modules that affect Canvas rendering, getting to familiarize yourself with the way that Canvas, the perception manager works, and using the perception manager to schedule your refreshes of lighting, sight, sounds, overhead tiles is a very powerful tool that you should start to familiarize yourself with. All right, so one thing that was previously possible and then dropped out of being possible, but now should be possible once again, is defining custom canvas layers. I hadn't intended to make this not possible in 081, it just sort of happened. So now there's config canvas layers where you can configure the classes and layers which will be present in the canvas. So if you as a modder need to add an entirely custom layer to your canvas, you can do that and register it here, and it should play nicely with all of the other attributes of the canvas that are happening. So I think that's an important change. Made some improvements to the way that animation promises work. So for example, there used to be, there is sort of a user-facing implication of this. It used to be that if you toggled darkness and daylight back and forth really fast, you might get your scene stuck as those multiple animations would overlap. So now they do a better job of canceling each other. So if I start transitioning to nighttime and then halfway through I transition back to daytime, and then halfway through that I transition back to nighttime. In fact, let me do this with the API so it's all a little bit faster. Let's do canvas lighting, animate darkness. We'll go to 0 for 3 seconds. Darkness 0. That's darkness 1. So yeah, I can do quicker day-night cycle animations that don't interrupt when they interrupt each other, it will successfully cancel the previous animation and resolve that. You can also sort of chain these, of course. So for example, let's do something fun. Yeah, so suppose you wanted to do a day-night cycle type of thing. This will now be easier with the animation promises that the canvas offers. Oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, these should be a semicolon. So yeah, so I can set off a little cycle that will just kind of go back and forth, and you could have this going indefinitely, and it can be as short or as long as you want it to be. So except for on-tick syntax errors. Interesting. I wonder what caused that. Well, in theory, you'd be able to set up a day-night cycle here. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, you could chain these promises together to have daytime, nighttime automatically proceed. I want to see if this happens again. Oh yeah, interesting. Parent on tick. All right, well, I'm not going to debug this right now, but I am going to take note of this error because this animation stuff is something that I had specifically worked on, so I don't know why it's introduced a new error here. But, oh well. Yeah, nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime. All right, so there's that. Let's see. Some further improvements to unlinked token hooks for pre-updates for token actors. there were some bugs there that were fixed. There were some bugs fixed in terms of the timing of like actor updates. One of the things that this like in particular caused that was like pretty frustrating was sometimes the like actor update might be like a step behind, where, you know, if I change my class from a level 1 barbarian to a level 2 barbarian. Oh, here's a cool thing. This is coming in the next D&D 5e update. When you level up, it now prompts you automatically if you want to add certain class features that you would be entitled to when you level up. Oh, look, another error. Huh. They're coming out of the woodwork, guys. I told you, this is an alpha channel update. We got to get this update out so that we can test it and catch all these errors and get them all cleaned up in time for release. Nice, indeed. This clean HTML is not a function. Well, I know where that is coming from. I just don't know why that is coming from. So that should be one to definitely check. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, some new hooks for changes to the global volume sliders. So if you're doing audio stuff and you need to respond when the user makes changes to these volume sliders up here, you can do that easily now. Also some new handlebars helpers for easily creating certain interface elements in a very standard way. So for example, I added some new handlebars helpers for like color picker, file picker already existed, let's see, range picker for like sliders, select options, as was previously. Let me show an example of like what this looks like in your templates. So like instead of always redoing the HTML markup for like, I need to pick a color and have a box that shows what color's been picked, and I want to be able to either edit the text color directly or use the color picker UI. Like that's all just wrapped into this template helper now. So you can do color picker or range picker, and it'll just kind of like do the right thing, you know, for you. So yeah, that's good. Some little API improvements for dice rolling, pretty minor stuff though. And then a number of bug fixes. I think the big ones, some improvements to the way that active effects are applied to fix an issue that was happening with like stacking up or concatenating effects that shouldn't have been happening. Fixing some issues with the document update workflow that was causing like some problems for downstream sheets, fixing some issues with promises and animations like I mentioned before, improving some performance aspects of texture caching. These are all in the notes that you'll be able to read these notes in detail. I'm just trying to kind of comment on anything that's particularly interesting. I already talked about the improvements to light source polygon computation. You know, that was some like really great performance and accuracy improvements of vision rendering. I'm very happy with that. That was like a bug that I really, really had wanted to see fixed for a long time. Let's see. I think the rest of this is pretty straightforward. Let's see here. I commented on some of this stuff already. Yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, there's lots of like little bug reports and API changes, but I think they're not necessarily worthy of using the stream time to like go into in completely boring detail. So I'm gonna stop there in terms of like going over the notes, and I'm gonna take questions from you all for the next 15 or 20 minutes until we wrap up. So of the stuff that you've seen today, you know, what are the things that you're most curious to learn more about, or what questions do you have that I can help explain better? Can we make the locked status on modules a lot more visible? We obviously have to look at that, because I think there was one or two things about it that weren't working exactly properly. We'll look at the UI as well. I think that it might be a little bit an issue of the stream. I feel like in firsthand, firsthand when you're actually using it, it I think looks a little more differentiated, but we'll look into that. We definitely want to make sure that you can tell the difference. Guitar Guy Nick asks about, will overhead tiles be able to block weather effects in a later update? Yeah, I think now that we have the concept of a roof, I was not able to do it in 082, but I think that now that the concept of a roof exists, I think allowing for that roof area to suppress, say, like rain effects when it is occluded would be a really great next step. And I think that would integrate things together pretty well. So like, actually, let me use snow instead of rain. I'll use leaves because they're easier to see on stream. So these like swirling little like leaves that are kind of like swirling around. There's lots of modules that add many more weather effects as well, by the way. I think it's doing the right thing here where, if you're looking at the roof, then showing the leaves is the right thing to do. But if you're here inside, those leaves should be suppressed, probably. So, I think that's a very obvious opportunity for improvement that would be good to make now that the concept of a roof exists. I think having the underlying data structures of like what is a roof and how do we know what a roof is, I think like that's an important first step though. Question from Injate or Injate, I don't know. Any plans for macros to be tied to actors, making filling in for absent players easier for the GM or sharing NPC control easier? I'm not sure I totally follow exactly what you mean, Injate, but maybe post a clarification of like what you have in mind in chat, and I'll see if I can comment on it. Question from Oisin DeBard. For modules with compatibilities, is there a way to list those? Currently it just says the module has one compatibility. Would you like to install it? I think that it does say now, either we made that change or we're about to make that change. I thought we made that change in this update though, where if you install something that has dependencies, it will list them out as well. Maybe Cody in chat can make a comment on that. Can you put a general spell check across the VTT? I could, but part of the big trouble with spell checking, Wyzad, is making assumptions about localization. There's JavaScript packages that can add spell checkers to pretty much any website, and I think that might be good module territory rather than something that necessarily ships with the core software. And then it could be up to the module or modules to think about like, how should we handle spell checking when the language is not English or something else. I think I don't have absolute conviction on that front. I could see adding a spell checker, to the software just in core in the future. But I'm not sure I've like made up. I don't think I have a very strong opinion on it one way or the other. Oh, hex grid updates. Yeah, bolts. Thank you. I forgot to comment on that. So hex grid. Let me talk about some of the things that I changed there. So with hex grid, there are a couple changes, mostly that have to do with snapping. So like what should things snap to in a hex grid environment? So now on a hex grid, if you are placing something that uses like a point source, like a light or a measured template, those single like point source placeables will snap to the either the center or the vertices of a hex. So that the snapping now is the corners and the center of the hex for these types of things, where previously it was a little bit more arbitrary. So this will be good for sort of tactical hex-based systems that maybe assume that have certain assumptions about like where a cone, say, like starts from, whether it's from the corner of the intersection of the hex or whether it's from the center of the hex, things like that. So that's for point sources. For things like tokens also, of course, snap to the hex when you're placing them. Tiles as well, depending on their size. But I think probably the biggest improvement for hex usage in the new update has to do with walls. So when placing walls on the hex grid, some of you may already be familiar with the like force snap to grid toggle. If you use the force snap to grid toggle, it will force every wall that you place to either be a vertex or a center of a hex. So the logical snapping rules for like where are the snap points on a hex grid are completely redone and improved so that for these sorts of things where when you're placing a point, the snap points are the vertices or the hex centers. So if you're walling a hex map, hopefully this is more like logically compatible with what you're trying to achieve when doing that walling, when you're forcing the snap there. And then for gridless mode, the only change is that there is no snapping really anymore. So even like for just placing like a light source, it used to like snap by like a tiny amount. Now it doesn't snap at all. So it's just totally freeform when you're doing gridless mode. Anything really can just literally like go anywhere, including walls. Like now, I said I didn't, not including walls. Walls, I will say walls still have a micro snap even on gridless mode, and this is to help, this is intentional. It's to help make sure that you can draw like perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical walls. Because if walls didn't, you can always bypass snapping with shift, and you can make a wall that's like, not quite horizontal, but by default, there is still like a tiny bit of snapping on for walls, even on gridless. But everything else on gridless mode has like no snapping at all. So it just goes exactly where you put it, and that's it. I had a drawing left over up here. Revelo Waldo asks, when you were zooming in and out during the overhead tiles demo, it looked pretty jittery. Is that an identified issue? The zoom isn't exactly smooth. It honestly never really has been. I'm not sure it's jittery. I'm not sure I would think of it as jittery. I feel like as the user, when I'm doing it myself, it feels fairly natural, although I think maybe like it's not as smoothly cinematic as you might be expecting it to be. That's probably an area that we might be able to improve upon in the future. It just kind of scrolls in little clicks. So like each individual click of the wheel is like one little scroll. And so that maybe gives like an illusion of some jitter. You can zoom, you can zoom smoothly using like the key. Ooh, although that definitely has like a little bit of jitter. I don't know. I wonder if that's because of the resizes. Using the key, holding it in, there's definitely like some stutter there. I wasn't seeing it with the scroll wheel though, so that might be something that's new related to keyboard zoom, that like that is chugging a little bit. I'll have to look into that. Black Cloud asks, is it possible to access the overhead compressed collision map from the API where modules can get the bounds of the roof for custom functions? Yes, good question. So suppose in the API, I'm going to grab this tile that I'm currently using as the focus of the HUD. So with this tile, there is a map of the non-alpha texture bounds. There is also a helper method to test occlusion for either a token or to test the pixel. An individual contains pixel. So you can test, like, for one specific pixel, like, is it in the location of the texture, yes or no. So there's different, like, methods that you can use as a module developer to take advantage of this overhead tile, like, non-alpha pixel mapping to learn if a tile is present in a certain location or not. Question from Elamor Seru, with the play loop controls on animated tiles, are there plans to allow start endpoints for the loop of the animated tiles? There's not plans for that in core, although modules can affect it. Maybe core in the future, perhaps, maybe. Can the token default settings be extended by a system? For instance, can a system define a set configuration? Yeah, so the default token settings under the hood are just stored as a game setting. So core, so there's a setting. It's core default token, and while it is a core setting, any module or system can assign the values of that setting. So a system could set what the default token configuration should be. A question from Neurolancer, when are you targeting 8.x release? I'm hoping that can happen by the end of May. So we're now at the end of April, but as I mentioned, this is the last alpha channel update in 08. And so everything from here on is going to be beta testing. And I think, just a couple of bugs that happened during the stream today aside, I feel that the software is in a pretty stable place right now. And so I'm hoping that the beta testing process will be relatively smooth. We shall see, and if it needs more time in the oven, we'll give it more time in the oven, but we're not planning on doing any real major features at this point. We're done with all of the features, and so now it's just a matter of, like, getting them to have good, user experience, and then there will be a release, and I'm hoping that can happen by the end of May. K-Zombie asks, round roofs, is it a thing? Yeah, so the roof can be any shape, because the roof is determined based on the actual the actual tile asset that you use. So for example, let me grab like a towers maybe. Yeah, here we go. So here's like a roof. So I'm going to set it to roof mode. This roof, it can be a circle, as you see. So as long as it's not going to fade until the center of the token goes underneath the roof. But once the center goes underneath the roof, it will fade. So yeah, the roof can be any shape, and the shape is based on the pixels of the tile asset that you're using. So if the actual image is round, then your roof will be round. Guitar Guy Nick asks, could it be added to the modules, a way of searching through modules with a quick uninstall process? It's a good idea. Yeah, that could definitely be added. Um, in a world where life gives you lemons, can a person selling lemon squeezers become rich? I would think so. One would think. All right, I'm going to skip up to current. Sorry if I'm passing over questions. Sorry, I'm just skipping up to current. Noche asks, any plans to make it so that you drag and drop active effects between items? Yeah, that should at some point be done. The intention is that active effects should be able to be like dragged and dropped, between characters, for example, to transfer an effect to like a different character. So there's actually like a little bug with that right now in the 5e system that I need to resolve. This is like a 5e thing, but yeah, in theory, like I want to be able to have the effects be draggable so that you can transfer the application of effect quite easily. That's the goal. With the new start stop on animations, can we play them backwards? I don't know. Can you do that with an HTML video element? Can you play it backwards? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Question from City No Doors. I'm using the wall height module. Just curious on Z height integration for core. I've commented on this several times during the stream. It's a very popular topic. Overhead tiles is kind of part of the long-term vision of what will accomplish this, but it's just a part of it. I think the more comprehensive long-term vision is to support the concept of scene levels that kind of work in a vertical stack with multiple sets of levels that can be like worked up to, and then that could be integrated into concepts of elevation in a third dimension. It's not part of this update, but it is definitely in our minds, but it will be some time before we implement that. So it's really only going to be modules for the time being that will handle that sort of thing. Zeb Xander asks, will we be able to have global illumination on the outside with darkness and light? I didn't comment on this, but so partly the answer to your question is no. I mean, any question like this, the answer is like maybe eventually, but really the answer is no. It's like that's not a thing that exists as part of this update. But related to what you're calling global illumination, we went back and forth on this quite a bit, and we've actually gone with a rename of that setting. The setting is now renamed to unrestricted vision range, which is a little bit wordier, but it is more accurate representation of what the setting does. The tooltip text is reveal all areas that controlled tokens have direct line of sight to observe. If disabled, vision is restricted to illuminated areas. So this setting doesn't really have, and it doesn't really provide global illumination. It just allows your token to see as far as they can, in a linear, unrestricted way. If this thing is off and vision range is restricted, then you're only seeing, a distance that is compatible with the vision radius of your token. So if this is smaller, like 20 feet, you're only seeing out to 20 feet. But if it's made unrestricted, then you can see in a straight line as far as you want. And it doesn't really have anything to do with illumination, because say like I make the darkness level very high, you can still have this setting with darkness. It's not really providing illumination. It's just affecting, like, do your line of sight, are your line of sight rays unrestricted in that way? So anyways, long story short is that, Oh, it's because I was like, why did it go off? I had the limitation threshold on. Yeah, so like in darkness, you can still have it where your sight can go like as far as it will go until it hits something, or you can have it that your sight is, ends at the end of your vision range. And both of those settings have different uses for different types of maps and different types of user experiences that you're trying to provide for your players. So we've tried to like clarify a little bit like what's actually going on with that setting. That wasn't your question. Your question is, can I have it to where, my vision goes as far as possible when I'm outdoors, but as soon as I go indoors, I'm like more limited. Not in the core software, not right now. Maybe in the future, there might be something that can be done there to make that toggle happen. Skipping ahead to current, again, I really apologize to anyone whose questions I'm skipping over in the interest of just like keeping up. Question from Oysen DeBard. When will the 5e update for 08X be available? I think I'm gonna focus on that next week. We're getting pretty close to that milestone. I expect us to be able to cut at least for testing purposes, release of the 5e system next week sometime. Any plans to allow tiles to emit light? No, there's no plans for that. For light sources that are in a location, the plan is to just keep using actual ambient light objects. Let's see. Can you set different default token configs for different types of actors? No, that could be a enhancement for the future Neurolancer, but we honestly weren't going to do this feature. It was like very much of a last minute thing, and it ended up proving to be pretty complicated actually. So like one set of default token settings for all types of actors is what we were able to accomplish for now. As with any system that we implement, there's always room for it to grow in the future. Any plan? Question from Big L Doth. Any plan to have an ability to shape the light, like hand draw for shaping like a ghostly light on top of a river? Yes, there are definitely plans for that. So currently all light sources are like radial emission like this, where there's a point source and a radius outwards. There is plan to add support in the future for like polygonal or hand-drawn light sources, where you might say like, I want a light source that has, this particular shape, and that should be the area that has a light source, and everything within it, this should be my light source. And that is something that we hope to do in the future. It's hard to say it's like planned, because it's just more of an idea that is on our backlog of things we want to do. But yeah, that's planned. The other thing is that what I don't currently like is that you have to use a light to accomplish certain things. So like, suppose I want like this, fog effect. I like the way this looks. It looks really great. And, suppose I want this for reasons, like maybe I want to use it as part of the like chimney smoke of these chimneys, right? Maybe I want something that looks like this, where, it makes it look like the chimney smoke is sort of like swirling, it sort of creates the illusion of animation on top of something that's normally just like a static image. I like that. I want that, but what I don't like right now is that it has to be a light, because, my chimney smoke shouldn't really be like creating light. It just should be moving. So the other thing that's like definitely planned, but we haven't gotten around to doing it yet, is allowing for the placement of just animations without lighting. So currently, like, it's linked to lights, but it shouldn't be a light. It should just be, you know, I should have some way to mark an area as like animate this area with a certain shader effect. And so that's what we want to do in the future, is make it to where you could like say, you know, oh, I've got chimney smoke here. I want this polygon or this area to, you know, to have the chimney smoke animation, and then it would have that animation in that area. But anyways, yeah, that's all stuff that we hope to do for the future. But you know, everything takes time. All right, my voice is going pretty quickly, so I am going to take a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up for today. So maybe like 2 or 3 more questions for me, I think, and then I'll call it on this stream. Endless Nights asks about blocking browser right-click context menus. That's a thing that the Foundry software is preventing those from firing because, well, they're ugly and they don't really have options that are relevant for Foundry, at least, or so I claim. Caligo asks, how long is my hair? It comes down like a little bit below my shoulders now. I am due for my second vaccine in a week and a half, is going to be number 2 for me. And after I get number 2 vaccine, that is, before anyone's making any jokes at my expense. But when I get the second vaccine, I think I will think about, what do I want to do with the hair? Do I want to chop it off? Do I want to just try and like tame it a little bit more? It's totally wild right now. It's pretty out of control. I don't have much choice except to keep it like tied back right now. It's a little bit out there. Let's see. Maybe for our 1-year celebration coming up in May, if I haven't cut it yet, I'll pull the hair down and do the full like caveman get up. Revelo Waldo asks about the level up dialogue for 5e and long-term plans for character creation in that system, and any news with WotC. Well, we're continuing to work on automation related to character creation in terms of better modeling of classes, subclasses, races, other aspects of your character creation in terms of like hit dice management. There's lots of like really great stuff coming in the next 5e update. You know, like the configuration for hit dice, the configuration for your you know, senses, movement. I forget, like some of this stuff is like new, some of this is not new. There's a bunch of like new stuff though, and I think like the addition and management of classes and class features, there's more options now in terms of the classes and what data they can contain. So for example, like the Druid class, it now tracks the starting saving throws, the spellcasting ability that gives it its progression. It's going to be able to track like specific proficiencies that it grants. So we're working to improve all of you know, all that type of stuff as part of the you know, part of the next update version. Let me scroll. Oh, the other half of your question was, oh, I need to, sorry, 1 second. I need to restart this thing. The other half of your question was about news related to wizards. Sorry, I didn't mean. I was like switching windows and I accidentally killed the VTT server. So the other part of your question was any news from WotC. Not at this time. I'm afraid there's not anything there I can share right at this moment. Although, I'd be very open and very hopeful to, having that sort of discussion if the opportunity presents itself. At the moment, though, I'm just really happy with all of our great publishing partners that we do work with. Lots of folks that are releasing really great content for Foundry to support their published systems, and there's more of those coming. There's several additional publishers that we have work in the pipeline with. They're already well underway on working on some things, and I'm really excited to see those things come out. But yeah, hopefully I might have some news about Wizards stuff in the future, but not at the moment. One neat thing that I didn't show in the stream earlier is that you can now set a opacity for tokens. So if you want to have someone who's like sneaking around, but they're not like totally hidden, you can make their token, partially transparent now. That's a fun little thing. I don't know why I didn't add that sooner. All right. I think that about brings it to a conclusion, folks. Your questions were very good. I hope I gave you good answers. I really appreciate everyone hanging out and taking such an interest in the continued development of the software. It really helps to motivate me and to give me a great way to share what we're doing and get feedback and showcase all the amazing work. It was like so much work went into this update. I know that like many of you are expressing wonderful ideas for like how can the software continue getting better and better, but I really can't understate that like getting what we showed today done it took a lot of work. And so thanks for supporting us and being patient as we get these great new features added in. Really appreciate your support. I especially really appreciate the willingness of the folks in this community to share Foundry with their friends, with others, let people know about it, help spread the word, and at this point consider whether you want to participate in the testing process. Now this is going to be an alpha release, and therefore it is going to be dangerous to a degree, so I really don't recommend it unless you are intrepid. However, there will be a beta release with all of these features as well as bug fixes coming next week or slightly thereafter. So probably within the next 10 days or so, you can expect there to be a beta channel release for this, which will be a little bit more friendly for those of you who want to participate in testing. And we would certainly appreciate if you do that. But be aware that it is a version of the software that is out ahead of where your modules are and where some game systems are. So you need to be prepared to give some allow some patience to the community developers who are doing such great work and hard work to support these modules and systems. Give them some time to get updated as well. All right. Well, thank you all so much. It's been great hanging out with you. I really appreciate your kind words, your support, your enthusiasm. Thank you so much for that positive vibes and encouragement. And yes, I will be releasing, one of the things that I'm planning to do at some point is like this map. Obviously, this map is designed to make the most of overhead tiles. I've got a couple other maps that also do that now, and I'm also thinking about going back to my sort of back catalog of maps and, updating them to use roofs and to use overhead tiles and stuff. So if you're looking for some maps that will allow you to test the new stuff, I'll be adding this map as well as some other ones to that Patreon module. As well as part of the 08 update process. All right, folks, that's all I have, I think. Thank you all for keeping me company. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for your interest. And I will be talking with you all very soon. And stay tuned for the 08.2 release. happening later today, 083 beta in the next 10 days or so, and then a release version of 08 coming towards the latter half of May, when we will be doing a lot to celebrate our anniversary, which is a really great milestone for us that will be coming up in late May. We'll have a sale on license keys. If you're thinking about buying, you might consider waiting. If you're not in a huge rush, there will be a discount coming at the end of May. Yeah, anyways, that's all I've got. Thank you all so much. Great hanging out with you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend filled with fun and relaxation and gaming and friends and all that good stuff. Be good to each other. Take care. Cheers. Thank you. Happy gaming. Farewell.